Welcome, everybody, to Digital Marketing Europe. This is day 2. I hope you've enjoyed the first day so far. Please type in the chat where you're tuning in from, how you're enjoying the conference so far. Really, really excited to be hosting day 2 of this track on Search World. I'm Katie Stoddard. I'm a host and speaker and coach, and really excited to be here with you all day today. Regarding the first topic of the day, did you know that most keyword research is wrong? For keyword research to work, we need to both take into account existing websites and business goals. Very few systems do this, and this is where our next speaker comes in. He will teach you how to create your own content-based plan for developing content based on your clients' successes. Our next speaker is the author of Entity SEO and received the UK Search Personality Award of the Year. He was the marketing director of Majestic.com and now the co-founder of Entity SEO Toolkit in Links. Without further ado, please show your excitement. Please type in the chat if you're excited to welcome Dixon Jones.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks ever so much for coming on, guys. I do appreciate it. I do hope that that my screen is going to appear at some point on the slideshow. Katie, if it isn't, then do shout and let me know. I can see it there, so that's good. Now, what's a little bit of a problem is that looks to be the online version. So I'm just going to go straight to my first slide here this way and we do it from there, so that's fine. Okay, guys, thank you very much for coming along. I'm Dixon Jones, and hopefully I'm going to show you how to do content planning in a different way to how a lot of people look at content planning, but it's quite a scientific way, and it's quite a valuable way because it's going to resonate quite well with your business and how that business is developing. So the purpose of the presentation is to understand how Google in particular, although Bing seems to be on the rise right now, sees your content as a set of related entities rather than as a bunch of keywords, and use that to understand how looking at the world in terms of entities trumps looking at the world in terms of keywords, in terms of search engine optimization. And once we've understood the underlying knowledge, then we can learn how to optimize our content using knowledge graphs instead of keywords. And it looks a bit scary, but it's not as scary as it seems. So who is this and why should you care? My name is Dixon Jones, and as Katie said, I wrote this book, Entity SEO. Actually, you can see it behind me as well, and I've got involved in this idea of entities for quite a long time now, ever since Google's decided they were going to buy Freebase back in 2014, and I've been around doing SEO since 1998-9. My first website using Front Page 97. So I've really been around a long time. I know I've been around a long time because my daughter is talking at Brighton SEO next month. So the effects of doing this keyword research is it can be like this. So these are 3 case studies, not all ours, but they're all using this approach, so it can be dramatic when you get this idea right. So if you do want to get these slides, or if you do find that I haven't got time for a question, hopefully we'll have time for questions. But if you don't, then you can email talk@dixonjones.com with planning in the title, and I'll send the slides through to you at any time. So I want to start with the idea of the word Mustang. So this is my car. I love my new car. It's electric and beats a Tesla, and it's it's the new Mustang. The old Mustang, of course, was an iconic car, and then the horse on the other side is also a Mustang. So when somebody searches for Mustang, how does a search engine know whether you're looking for a car or a horse? More importantly, when you're doing your keyword research and the word Mustang is part of your research, how do you know what percentage of people typing in Mustang are looking for a car and what percentage of people are looking for a horse. Because if you're selling cars, then everybody that's looking for the horse is an irrelevant person and shouldn't be counted in the keyword numbers. And this is the crux of why I think a lot of the keyword planning is wrong, because all of the keyword planning is how many people searched for Mustang. And these are two completely different concepts. So there's two questions. How do people know? How does Google know? And what percentage of that keyword is irrelevant? Here's another example. This is my other car. On the left, we've got a picture of a pilgrim and a picture of a bulldog. And on the right, we've got a picture of a car called a pilgrim bulldog. Again, these are entirely different concepts. And this time, I would imagine there's a lot less people interested in the concept of a pilgrim bulldog that are talking about a car than there were for the case of the Mustang. So again, we've got this dichotomy of ideas. People type in a word, but they may mean something completely different to what you think they mean when you're doing your keyword research. And really, what has happened in 2023 and for a few years now is that Google sees the world in terms of entities. So it doesn't really matter whether you type in Eiffel Tower, Tour Eiffel, or a big metal tower in Paris. The point is the user is thinking of exactly the same thing. So they're thinking of the object. They're not thinking of the language that they're saying, the words that they're choosing to describe the object. They're thinking of a physical idea. And so that's fine. With an Eiffel Tower, we know there's only one. We know what it is. Everybody's fine. Sometimes it's not so clear, though. Here's a bunch of different maps of New York, of Manhattan. Do all of these maps describe how you get from A to B in Manhattan? Well, they do, really. Do they give some concept of distance between places in Manhattan? Yes, they do. Could you describe any of these as Manhattan? Well, apart from the image of the photograph, then no, not really. They're not Manhattan. They're representations of Manhattan. And this is an important thing to realize in the terms of in the context of a map, because a map of Manhattan is a representation of Manhattan. It isn't Manhattan itself, but it is going to give you a very good idea of how to get from A to B, regardless of the map that you use. So if you think about Google organizing the world in terms of entities and topics and ideas, you don't have to have direct access to every bit of Google's information to be able to build your own map of world ideas, if you like. There are many other knowledge graphs out there than Google's. And as long as they are trying to represent the truth, they will guide you in the right direction to be able to do content marketing, content planning, and search engine optimization. So a little bit of more evidence around Google using entities as opposed to keywords in search. If you, on the left-hand side here, it's not quite fitting on the screen, but anyway, on the left-hand side, the search is Sicilian, and it's coming up with a region in Italy. I'll work on the middle one because we can see it. If we type in French, we can see that Google is suggesting things like French bulldogs, French toast, French onion soup. If it was Sicilian, there was an Italian region. And so you can see very clearly there the difference between entities like the French Connection and keywords like French translation or French to English translation or French toast recipe. So those ones with the little search bar, search magnifying glass are sort of keyword searches, and then they've got these concepts like French Connection and French bulldogs, where they've got physical images. They know exactly what they are. Interestingly, when you type in French versus Sicilian, there is no entity in there. They're all keyword searches. But here's one of my other passions. The chess sits behind me, actually. French, when you type in French versus Sicilian, Google understands that this is two types of chess openings that we're talking about now, and comes back with a bunch of results that are explaining the difference between the French opening and Sicilian opening in chess. So how does Google know this? It's built a world around entities and knowledge graphs, but but how does Google then differentiate between these concepts when you've typed in two words that mean completely different things? And why does it give us a marketing edge? Well, knowledge graphs are everywhere. This is one that was in my local pub, a photograph of a map of beer. I thought it was fairly European. You know, we've got German lager here and Austrian lager, and it shows the connections between different types of beer around Europe and around the world, really. And I think that's a pretty good representation of a knowledge graph. And it's often very good to think about a website. If you've got a beer website, then it's a representation possibly of this kind of picture where you've got pages about different types of ale, and there's connections between the two, and the lines between the different entities might be links on your web page, or they might be connecting ideas within the content of a web page, but you're still talking about entities that are all around the concept of beer. So this idea of a knowledge graph is not a difficult thing to understand if you just see it in a poster like this. I think that all of a sudden knowledge graphs become much less mystical. But the way that Google or a search engine looks at those, the way that we look at those, is we read URLs and we try and understand the underlying concepts or ideas. And those ideas are all entities. So I would describe every one of these ideas as something that has maybe an article in Wikipedia, for example, has a page in a encyclopedia. That would be a good concept of understanding what an entity is. So you're reading all these ideas, and then you're converting them into entities that have an easy lookup in a big search engine. So the blue ideas might be referring to concept KGID T678 or whatever it may be, and I've just made up those numbers. But by doing that, you actually turn the whole of the internet into a bunch of numbers that you can then see how those numbers are related to each other and which ones are close to each other. So if we go back to our Mustang versus Mustang representation, then if you're reading a page, or if a machine is reading a page that is talking about Mustang in the context of torque and electricity and Ford, then it's clearly referring to a Mustang in the form of a car, as opposed to if it's talking about stables and the wild and animals, then it's talking about Mustang as a horse. So it's when you start connecting entities together that it becomes much easier for a search engine to differentiate between different ideas. And I remember a lot of old school SEOs, just putting all of their products on pages, hoping that that's going to help. But it often doesn't. It just doesn't help to differentiate, because it means that rich language is going to help a search engine to understand a concept. And that's why most of the search results that are unpaid are coming back as rich text. It's not because they're long, it's because a search engine can really understand and match the user query to the underlying concept and content on the pages. So what we really need to get here is that using keywords just because they're in a list of popular keywords is a huge mistake. You can see now that seeing in a search engine tool that Mustang has a search volume of 100,000 a month is a big mistake, because you haven't got the context of what the user is trying to look for, and so you need to also group those ideas and put them into some kind of context for everything to work very well. And it means that your planning around keyword volumes is not as effectively very good. So here's the Azores. You might have a number for the Azores with a traffic potential, but you've got a bunch of other keywords underneath. So the search tools, this is an Ahrefs report, do tend to try and group things a little bit. This is SEMrush's. So SEMrush here has tried to group everything around at the bottom. We've got different sheets in the Azores around volcanoes in the Azores and holidays in the Azores and cruises around the Azores. But by the way, they've also decided to try and look at user intent. Now, I've got a bit of a bugbear about how SEOs look at user intent, because context and intent are the missing links about how we connect these ideas and these entities together, and how a search engine connects, what the user is searching for with the content that's on a page. So you need to group these ideas, but this idea of intent is really something that I think most SEOs have got wrong. So here I'm trying to type in horseshoe, and we can see a bunch of entities in the suggestions here of horseshoe crab or horseshoe lake or horseshoe path. I was in Wales at the time, and the horseshoe path is in Wales. And so we've got these ideas, but the intent on there is an issue, because everybody in the SEO industry uses this concept of intent is either informational or navigational, transactional or commercial, or geographical, local. Even Wikipedia talks about intent in terms of one of those 4 or 5 ideas, and that's absurd for SEOs. I don't know why we ended up doing that. I don't know why it's in Wikipedia, because when you type in the Azores, the user's intent is not clear. The user's intent is, well, according to Google, is either they're looking at the weather or the map or the flights or a particular time. The things that they're looking at are not necessarily one of those 4 ideas of informational, navigational, transactional. The intent is really related to the verb that's around there. So I think that when somebody types in horseshoes on their own, it's very difficult for a search engine to understand the context in which the user is searching. And so it comes back with a bunch of results. The only thing when I did this search that Google knew is where I was, so it's come up with some pubs with the word horseshoe, and then it's gone straight to the Wikipedia page, and then it's got a farrier's there and horseshoes for you, which is probably another farrier. So a place to buy horseshoes. User intent is really about the verbs. If you type in a house, then are you trying to buy a house, sell a house, decorate a house, look at a house, evaluate a house? All of these are different intents, and I think that we probably should have a different discussion really about user intent and get rid of these ideas of transactional and informational. But there are 3 steps to a knowledge graph. So, okay, so I went off on a little bit of a tangent there. I apologize for that. I'll probably come back to it a little bit. But if we're going to understand that Google understands the world in terms of entities, then how can we do some planning around entities? There are 3 steps. Find the most authoritative content around the subject. You just need 10 pages that are authoritative around a subject. You can then go down there and break that into entities and then tabulate the results and make it presentable and reusable. So let me explain how that goes. So breaking content into entities, that's not as difficult as you might think. You can, of course, read a page of content and go down and say, right, now they're talking about the Eiffel Tower. Now they're talking about Kyoto. Now they're talking about this, that, and the other, and write them all down. Fortunately, there's a lot of tools out there that will speed that up. And then most of them, there's a lot of them are free. So you've got Google's. This one I'm shown here is actually Google's is IBM Watson. And so IBM Watson has a free natural language understanding algorithm demo that you can just go and find, put the text in, and it'll break it down into the underlying entities. Google also has its own with its natural language AI. And they've got a demo there. TextRaiser is a really good one. And of course, Inlinks has one as well. So you can use Inlinks as well. All of those, you can do things for free. And you can break a page of text down into underlying entities. Now, the entities that they have may be slightly different, but go back to that idea of the maps in Manhattan. As long as they're all going in the same direction, they're going to help you connect the dots of what entities are closely related to each other. So breaking the content down into entities is not quite as long as a process as you might think. But the process then of merging everything into a knowledge graph of what are the best topics to talk about if you're trying to dominate a particular SERP is ideally to then look at all of the pages that are already authoritative around a subject. So let's take the top 10 pages in Google for a particular phrase, take all of those entities and merge them into one knowledge graph of entities and topics. That's going to give us a much more powerful data set for understanding the content that we need to write about than just looking at the volumes of keywords. I think that's the crux of where I'm trying to go today. So this is the Inlinks platform that does the same thing, but you could do this with spreadsheets. So now when we come to the Azores, we can see the concept of the Azores is an important thing to talk about. Islands, archipelagos, Portugal. We've got some idea of how important those ideas are, rather than how many keywords, how many times people type in those keywords. Also, on the Inlinks one, you'll see on the right-hand side, that G there, we also use Google's lookup as well as our own, so we can see whether Google is understanding a particular concept as well. And we can then have a look at our own content and see whether we've used that. So in this particular example, this particular page has been analyzed against the knowledge graph that's been created of these ideas. And we can see that we've talked about the Azores, but we haven't talked about Archipelago. We haven't talked about Portugal. We now know the kinds of things that we need to talk about if we're going to be able to improve our content. But this also leads to really good keyword research, because it means that the ideas that are coming out of this, we can then prioritize and say, you know what, it's not that we need to write about Azores tourism guide. It's the concept that, talking about an Azores tourism guide is very relevant to this particular concept of this particular topic of the Azores. If you're in the travel industry, then this is going to be a very high relevant thing to talk about, and so something that you're going to need to talk about regardless of the keyword volume. And so we've got the keyword volumes here taken from SEMrush data, but it's not the keyword volume that's important. It's the connection between the content that you've got on your website and the content on your website and the user, the query of the user, and the intent of the user. So remember that we had that user intent layer that I tried to mention a little bit about, buying a house or looking at a house or selling a house or decorating a house. Well, now we can also look at the user intent in terms of verbs as well. So what we are actually doing here, and you can do the same with spreadsheets, is you can sit there and say, right, all of those Google Suggests that we were looking at, let's throw these keywords back into Google Suggests and see what Google thinks people are talking about. So when it comes to the Azores, then people are talking about, why visit the Azores in the context of travel, and which Azores islands should I visit, and when should I visit the Azores. However, if they were talking about pronounce, then the topic cluster would be completely different. How do you pronounce the Azores? What languages the Azores come from? These kind of ideas would be very different user intents to intent around the concept of travel. So we can then divide that planning out, and now we start to get content ideas and keywords or questions that are suggested by Google Suggest, but we only input ideas that have already been returned from concepts that are talked about by our peers, by people that are already ranking for the concepts that we want to rank for. So I hope that's kind of making sense, because I feel I've kind of gone quite fast through there. But it means that once you understand the content that you need to talk about, then you can start to automate all sorts of bits of stuff. So you can sit there and say, right, I need to talk about this is a page for public speaking. If I want to talk about public speaking, then I need to talk about information. I need to talk about digital marketing. I need to talk about search engines. Sorry, so it's about SEO speaker, this page. And so the main things I'm talking about for that are the concept of public speaking and the concept of search engine optimization. And we can define those in terms of a Wikipedia entry. So we know that there's a Wikipedia page for public speaking. We know that there's a Wikipedia page for search engine optimization. We do need to talk about things like information and digital industry and internet marketing, and we need to mention that in the content. So we can talk about that in the content of our page, the main ideas of public speaking and search engine optimization, and we can now use the schema to define that, because we've got a mathematical formula that says, you know what, if we want to rank for SEO speaker, then we need to make sure that the main topics are search engine optimization as defined by the Wikipedia URL, and public speaking as defined by the Wikipedia URL, and we need to mention these main ideas as well. So we talk about them in the text, but we can also use this kind of schema to turn that into a mathematical formula that a search engine can understand. So we've turned the concept of the page into a data set, because a knowledge graph like Google will use public speaking on the Wikipedia page as a flag, an identifier for their knowledge graph ID number for the concept of public speaking. So we know that Google, when it built its own knowledge graph, used Wikipedia data as a training set for ideas and concepts. So every concept has, or hopefully has, a Wikipedia URL, if a Wikipedia URL exists, for any decent knowledge graph. So you can use Wikipedia URLs to translate between your view, your map of the world, and a search engine's map of the world. And that's the power of schema. Of course, a search engine doesn't have to use the schema to try and understand those concepts. It's trying to understand it by the terms and the words that you're using on the page. You just need a good natural language understanding algorithm and a knowledge graph to do that, which all the search engines, or the big search engines, have now. So you can then create a topic graph of ideas, either for planning content, or you can do it for your existing content, or you can compare that and create a gap analysis for your own content against the competition. So now you can connect those entities and create content planning at in a different way. So the best bit about this idea of reading content and then breaking it down into ideas and concepts is that you can extrapolate the process from doing it at a page level to doing it at a site level, and this way you start to get some planning for a whole website or a whole market. So now you can plan content in real life. So go to the Azores example. This is an Azores website, Azores Choice, and we can see the keyword reports at a site level. We can go and analyze all of those pages on the site and break all of that site down into underlying entities. And if you start to do that with the competitor sites, then you start to build out pictures. Alternatively, you can do it with your own website and say, right, okay, we've now got all of these entities already on our website. If we throw those back into Google Suggest, then we can start to come up with an extended knowledge graph that is ideas that are similar to the stuff that we've already talked about, but are extrapolations that Google thinks are important, and we haven't got them in our content. So instead of suggestions like this, you get suggestions like this, where we say, right, we want to write content around Portuguese holidays in 2022, Portuguese holidays dates. So we've got a topic of a cluster of topics, and we've got keywords and questions that are going to be recommended because they are important, not just in terms of volume, but more particularly in terms of the fact that there are gaps in our existing knowledge graphs. So if you think about our own website as a knowledge graph, then you can see that there's a gaps in your knowledge that are semantically very close, and you need to talk about those because your customer wants them, but you also need to talk about those because without that you're not going to be seen as an authority within your particular sphere, within your particular vertical. Right, I'm half an hour into my presentation now, and I want to make sure that I kind of have a bit of time for questions as well. So I've tried to go a little bit faster, but I've got a few more slides I think left. But now you can structure your website around your business, not somebody else's business. So you can get the idea of a beer website, and you can say, right, I have these synonyms for the concept of beer, but these synonyms, if you go back to the Eiffel Tower slide where everybody was typing in different things that all meant Eiffel Tower, you may only really need a one page around beer, because a pint and beers and brewing and stuff, they may be very, very semantically close in your industry. They may not. If you're just a website on beer, then fine. You probably need lots of pages about beer. However, if you're a supermarket that's selling lots and lots of goods, then possibly one page around beer or one category around beer is going to be fine for you. You don't need to delve into every single beer and have a long conversation about every single beer, because that's going to be to the detriment of being seen as an authority on selling salt and all the other bits and pieces. So you need to get your context right for your business and not go too far down one avenue, if you like. Dixon Jones used to be an architect in the UK, and they were quite a famous architect. And for a long time, before I understand this idea of concepts, I kind of used to try and talk about architects every now and then on my website, just because I thought that Google thought that architects and Dixon Jones were semantically close. I didn't realize that I was ruining my chances at that particular point, because I was actually ambiguating rather than disambiguating the meaning of Dixon Jones as an SEO speaker. I was actually trying to merge these ideas together. Same with Mustang. If you start talking about horses on your car website, you're going to do yourself some damage, because you're detracting from the authority of yourself as Mustang as a car by talking about these concepts that are semantically very different to yours, but they use the same sort of words, so we kind of build them in. So wrapping it all up, hopefully it's okay. I might have gone a little bit quickly, and I hope that's okay, Katie. Wrapping it all up, search engine optimization is about matching topics and entities to real user intent. And we forget that real user intent when we come up with keyword planning that's based on keyword volumes. You can create an ad hoc knowledge graph without tools. You don't need a tool to create a knowledge graph. You can just go through a page and look at the important topics that are being talked about, map them out. And if you do that with 10 web pages that are all important about a particular subject, you're going to get those same topics repeated again and again. And you can have a spreadsheet that says, I need to talk about these ideas. And often it's only 3 or 4 ideas that will help a search engine understand exactly what your content is about, because those 3 ideas can triangulate the concepts very effectively. But doing that at scale needs, at the very least, a natural language processing algorithm. You just need something that can read a lot of text and turn it into underlying entities and concepts and ideas. And there's a few out there that you can use. We talked about IBM, we talked about TextRaiser, etc. And with Google Knowledge Graphs, with a knowledge graph and natural language processing, and Google Suggest, if you put those things that are coming out of that knowledge graph into Google Suggest, then Google Suggest will then find for you things that are semantically close to the concepts that you're already looking for. And you've got to siphon out the ones that are irrelevant, that are ambiguating your system, and find the ones that are specific to your system. And those Google suggestions create better content ideas than a list of keywords. so you can create better content around topic clusters of ideas. You can also generate schema very fast, a very specific schema that explains the concepts that are on your web page. You can internally link entities and concepts together by connecting those links. So I look at websites, and obviously in links, the word came from internal linking, and so I look at websites, particularly content-rich websites, as a tumbleweed of ideas, a tumbleweed of concepts. And what you're trying to do with internal linking is turn it into a cactus where it's really obvious where the authority on your website is for this idea and this idea and this idea and this idea, so that all links lead to Rome, so to speak, and it's very obvious where the authority is, and internal linking will reduce that cannibalization. And I think the last of the text is hidden underneath my my mugshot there. But the idea of good content planning, thank you very much, Katie, well done, is to have a look at the market in this concept, have a look at the web pages that are your competitors, that are the best of breed, and you can plan content using a content gap analysis of entities and concepts. Again, using content Google suggests to get the ideas, but then comparing that to the ideas that are already seen as important things to talk about within any particular environment or vertical that you've got. I think that's pretty much it. As I said, if you do want to get the slides, please email talk@dixonjones.com. Please put the word planning in the title. That email address is all over the place with different keywords in the title. And if you put something else in the title, the rule in my Outlook says put it into a bin, because it's just getting spammed by all sorts of things. So I only see the ones that have the word, the word of the talk in the title. And hopefully, if there are any questions, I'd be delighted to answer them. And thank you very much for your time today, guys.
Thank you so much, Dixon. That was epic. Really, really enjoyed it. Love your examples with the Azores. I actually spent my honeymoon in the Azores, so it's bringing back great
fantastic. It's there because I've never been, and I always want to go. So I have no.
Highly recommended. Highly recommended.
Good.
And
good.
I love this idea of the knowledge graph. I think it's so interesting to think of your website as a knowledge graph, and to also look at the competitors and do a gap analysis. So I learned loads.
And it doesn't scare. I mean, when you see it in terms of a picture on a wall of a pub of beer, the idea doesn't scare people, I hope, so much as when you start talking about it in terms of vectors and ID numbers. It can be scary, but once you get the concept, maybe it's more complicated than that. But I don't think we need to know much more than that for marketers.
Yes, and I love this idea also of disambiguation. So looking at what are you really about, what are you really doing. So in your case, differentiating yourself from the architect, not talking about that and really talking about SEO speakers. So then Google knows if someone writes Dixon Jones architect, it won't show you, it'll show the architect guy. And if someone writes Dixon Jones SEO speaker, it'll show you. So it really is creating that separation.
Those architects caused me so much problems for about 20 years. Fortunately for me, they've gone bankrupt now, but they have a Wikipedia page, so they still appear. I can't beat them. It's hard to beat them, but it's very easy to beat them when somebody types in some kind of context. Because obviously, if they did want the architects, I don't need them. They don't need me. But funnily enough, although they've gone, I've started getting. I got for Christmas this year. Somebody else sent me this beautiful book on architecture, which was obviously some corporate gift that went out, and the only postal address I could find was my postal address. So
some advantages. So one question that did come through is what to do if the competition for your most important keywords is very high. So how can you differentiate yourself then? That was one question.
Well, differentiation is the word that you didn't use it there wasn't used in the question, but this is the magic for it, is to try and find some differentiation. So the competition may be incredibly high, and if you take casinos, sort of,
yoga
betting. yoga teacher. Is that high? Is that really high?
Probably.
I'm
You're just
sure,
like a random yoga teacher, like
Yeah.
just
Okay.
without
So
the
you've got to
location.
find your. So if I was going to do that, then I would really be focusing on, what my strength is. So I would be fat yoga teacher, and so I would be really focusing on my strength, which is I'm fat and I can still do yoga. I can't do yoga very well, but anyway, if I was, I would be taking that angle and trying to find an affinity with a particular audience within the yoga market that I could that I could bond with and make the association. Now that may cut away 90% of your audience, but the ones that are doing yoga for meditation only instead of doing yoga to lose weight or whatever, these people are, even if they do come to your yoga lessons, are then going to see your yoga lessons in the context of, oh, these have got loads of, in my case, fat people, and I'm already thin. I don't want to be here. So you're going to have that affinity. I don't think I've chosen the best example, but you chose yoga, and the only affinity I could come up with yoga was my, was I could lose weight if I did it more. But I think the idea here is to create that differentiation, that disambiguation. Now that doesn't have to be. That could be around locations. So there are an awful lot of barbers, hairdressers in the world, but there's only so many in every town. So now you're only fighting against the 10 in your town. If you're a nationwide set of barbers, then local search becomes very, very important for a lot of those businesses. Because that differentiates very, very quickly. So that's why in the States, local search has become a huge part of SEO, less so in the UK because it's a smaller country. But even so, as soon as there's a geographical location, that immediately cuts out most of the competition in some kind of context. But if you can't do that, then you still have to fight to be the authority. So, I fight around, search engine optimization. So the way that I differentiated my approach was around its concept of entities, because everybody else was talking about keywords and links, because I was the marketing director of Majestic, and I still go Majestic, have that banner behind me. But those things have differentiated me, and 25 years into SEO, I'm still relevant enough to be talking at Digital Marketing Europe, and I don't take that for granted. You have to show up. You have to keep on showing up, and you have to demonstrate that you remain relevant, or you will die. And your content on the internet is exactly the same. You may have a big audience, a big amount of competition to deal with. You have to be the best at something. If you're not the best at something, or in a position to be the best at something in the next few months, go home.
Yes, stay relevant, stay on top of it, continue to give. Thank you so much, Dixon. This was so interesting. I really enjoyed it. I learned loads, and I also see in the chat people that really appreciated it. Really interesting. Also love chess, so I'm going to look up that French and Sicilian opening and check it out.
Find me on chess.com. Look up Dixon Jones. It might be an H in the middle there, and I'll happily give anybody a go. Okay.
Amazing. And if you have any questions for Dixon, write to talk@nixonjones.com. And
planning in the title.
Yes. And feel free to connect with me as a host on LinkedIn, Katie Stoddard, with Dixon Jones. I imagine you're also on LinkedIn. Yes. So thank you so much for tuning in. Next talk is on indexing website with Dan Taylor. So stay tuned for the next talk. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hi, Dan.
This is all we got. Remember the revolution in our minds. This is all we got.
Lock me out of this life institution. I am angry and high on illusions. Yes, I hate, but it's not a solution. Try my best, but I'm just a human. Oh, we don't need to say we're sorry. We don't need to worship heaven's heart. We don't need to say